You don't feel unsettled because you're doing too much. You feel unsettled because nothing ever feels finished. You move from one thing to the next. Messages half answered, tasks half started, thoughts you meant to come back to later. Even when your schedule is clear, your mind doesn't feel clear. It feels like something is still open, still waiting. That feeling isn't random. Your brain is extremely sensitive to anything incomplete. A task you haven't finished, a conversation you didn't quite end, a decision you postponed. Once your brain notices something unfinished, it keeps it active. Not loudly, quietly. Psychologists sometimes call these open loops. But you don't need the term to recognize the experience. It's that subtle tension in the background. Not stress, not panic. Just the sense that something hasn't closed. There's an important detail here. Your brain doesn't treat unfinished things as background noise. It treats them as active signals. Even when you're not consciously thinking about them, they stay lightly charged. Like a browser tab you didn't close. It's not in front of you, but it's still using resources. That's why unfinished things can feel mentally loud, even when your environment is quiet. Your attention isn't being pulled forcefully. It's being gently tugged, over and over again. This isn't a flaw in your brain. It's an old survival feature. For most of human history, unfinished things were dangerous. Unfinished shelter meant exposure. Unfinished plans meant risk. Unresolved threats meant vulnerability. So the brain evolved to track what wasn't done yet, to keep unfinished things in awareness until they were resolved. Completion meant safety, and closure meant relief. When something ended, the mind could let go. But modern life works very differently. Today, your brain is surrounded by things that start but don't finish. Messages that don't require immediate replies. Tasks that never fully end. Information that leads to more information. Each one creates a small, open loop. Individually, these loops seem harmless. You barely notice them forming. But the brain doesn't feel them individually. It feels them collectively. 10 unfinished things don't feel like 10 small weights. They feel like one heavy one. And because there's no clear signal telling the brain when it's allowed to stop tracking them, they stay active by default. Nothing tells the mind, you're done for now. Even when you stop moving, those loops remain open. Your body rests. Your mind keeps tracking what's unresolved. That's why rest often doesn't feel restorative anymore. Because mentally, nothing has ended. Nothing is asking for action, but everything feels pending. This creates a constant low-level tension, a background sense of incompleteness. Over time, that tension becomes familiar. So familiar, you may stop noticing it directly. Instead, you feel it as mental fatigue, as restlessness, as the sense that you can't fully relax. And here's where it quietly reshapes behavior. When the mind rarely gets closure, it starts to avoid depth. Long tasks feel heavier than they should. Open-ended projects feel strangely uncomfortable. Even enjoyable things can feel draining if they don't have a clear sense of completion. So the brain looks for quick exits, small hits of progress, short bursts of engagement, not because they're satisfying, but because they end. A notification clears, a video finishes, a scroll reaches the bottom. Each one offers a brief sense of closure, even if it doesn't last. Over time, this trains the mind to prefer things that feel complete quickly and resist things that don't. This also affects focus. Attention works best when the mind isn't holding too many unfinished threads. But when your brain is tracking dozens of open loops, focus begins to fracture. Not because you lack discipline, but because your attention is already divided. Every unfinished thing is a decision waiting to be made, and decisions you haven't made still consume mental energy. So starting something new feels heavier than it should, not because you're lazy, but because your brain is already full. This is also why entertainment doesn't solve the problem. Entertainment adds stimulation, but it doesn't create closure. It distracts you from open loops temporarily, but it doesn't resolve them. So when the stimulation stops, the tension returns. This is why moments that should feel calming often feel strangely uncomfortable. Silence feels restless. Stillness feels unfinished. The mind isn't relaxing. It's scanning, looking for what it forgot, what it hasn't closed, what still needs attention. And without realizing it, you reach for something else to fill the space. Not because you want more stimulation, but because the open loops are still there. Real relief doesn't come from doing nothing. It comes from letting something finish, from giving the mind permission to release what it no longer needs to hold. A calmer mind isn't built by adding more. It's built by carrying less. So if your brain never feels done, it may not be because you're behind. It may be because modern life rarely allows anything to truly end.